Death in the Gondola, a Whistler Village cozy mystery. Thanks for listening. Let's begin. The gondola station smelled of coffee, damp wool, and pine carried in on the cuffs of skiers stepping out of the morning cold. Austin Chambers stood near the loading line with his camera strap warm against the back of his neck, a paper cup tucked between both hands. The coffee was too hot, which suited him. It gave him something to hold while the village woke below the mountain, in small, careful sounds. Boots clicked on concrete. Jackets whispered. Somewhere near the ticket windows, a child laughed into a scarf. Outside, Whistler Village sat beneath a pale winter sky, its roofs powdered white, its paths lined with people moving as if the day had already promised them something. Above it all, Whistler Mountain rose wide and patient. Blackcomb stood across from it, both slopes stitched with lifts and trails. Austin had photographed so often he sometimes saw them when he closed his eyes. Still, mornings never looked exactly the same. That was why he kept coming. He lifted his camera and took one frame of steam rising from a paper cup on a bench. Then another of sunlight touching the rim of a ski helmet. Small things, honest things. Austin had been the official mountain photographer for long enough that tourists assumed he belonged anywhere with a lanyard and a lens. He was less sure. Belonging, to him, had always seemed like something other people did without thinking. Morning, Austin. Vivian Liu, the lift host, stood beside the gate with a tablet in one hand and a knit cap pulled low over her dark hair. She had the steady look of someone who knew where every lost glove, late ticket, and nervous tourist was supposed to go. Morning, Austin said. You are riding up? First light package. Couple from Seattle. Anniversary shots near the overlook. Car 7. Then, best window. Less glare. He nodded his thanks and stepped forward. A woman in a cream parka joined the line ahead of him. Silver hair brushed her collar, and a red scarf was tucked neatly beneath her chin. She carried no skis, only a small leather purse and a folded trail map. She turned to Austin with a polite smile. Does this go all the way to the roundhouse? It does, he said. About 25 minutes, depending on stops. Good. I promised myself I would see the view before I lost my nerve. Her voice had the careful brightness of someone trying not to admit she was afraid. Austin smiled. The mountain is kind from inside the gondola. I will hold you to that. She glanced at his camera. You work here? Some days it feels that way. The woman laughed softly. Samantha Sterling, she said. Austin Chambers. Vivian waved them forward. Car 7 rocked gently as the doors opened. Samantha stepped in first, then Austin, then a young couple with rental helmets and matching mittens. A retired man with a guidebook came last, lowering himself carefully onto the bench. The doors closed with a padded thump. For a moment, the car smelled of cold air, wool, and Samantha's peppermint lozenges. Then the station slipped away. Whistler Village dropped beneath them in neat roofs and winding paths. A gondola cable hummed overhead, steady and familiar. Samantha sat across from Austin, one gloved hand resting on her purse. She watched the ground fall away, then breathed out through a smile. Well, she said, that is higher than it looked from below. The young woman beside her grinned. First time? First time at Whistler, Samantha said. I was here for the Olympics years ago, but only in Vancouver. I watched the ski events on a screen and decided one day I would come up the mountain myself. The retired man tapped his guidebook. 2010, he said. The Winter Games. And the Paralympics after. Samantha's face softened. Yes, I remember the flags everywhere. Austin adjusted his camera bag at his feet. He liked passengers who spoke gently to strangers. They made the ride feel less like transport and more like a room floating between earth and sky. Little way up, Samantha opened her purse and drew out a small envelope. She looked at it, smiled to herself, then tucked it into the fold of her trail map. Austin noticed because noticing was his trade. At Tower 4, the gondolas slowed, then moved again. The young couple leaned close to the window, pointing down at a line of skiers crossing a bridge of snow. The retired man asked Austin whether the light was better from the top or from mid-mountain. Top, if the clouds hold, Austin said. But clouds have their own opinions. Samantha laughed at that. The laugh was small, but it warmed the car. Then she coughed. Once. A dry, startled sound. Austin looked over. Samantha had one hand at her throat and the other pressed against the bench. Her eyes widened, not in terror, but in surprise, as if she had reached for a step that was not there. "Are you all right?" Austin asked with urgency. "Samantha," he said. She tried to answer. Her lips parted. No sound came. The young woman across from her reached out. "Ma'am?" Samantha's shoulders dipped forward. The red scarf slid against her parka. Austin crossed the small space, careful in the swaying car, and knelt in front of her. "Samantha, can you hear me?" Her hand loosened. The tray map slipped to the floor. The gondola kept climbing. By the time Car 7 eased into the upper station, the coffee smell had gone thin, and every passenger sat very still. The top-line attendant was waiting at the platform. She saw Austin's face before the doors opened. "Call patrol," he said quietly. She did not ask why. That was the first thing he appreciated. The room behind the upper station office was small, lined with hooks, spare radios, and a shelf of mismatched mugs. It smelled of tea bags, old wood, and the orange peel someone had left on a saucer beside the kettle. Samantha Sterling lay covered in a wool blanket, on a bench outside the office, beyond the frosted glass. Ski Patrol had done what they could, then spoken in low voices and shaking their heads. "Natural causes," one patroller had said. "Likely sudden." But the word sudden did not settle the passengers. The young couple whispered near the doorway. The retired man held his guidebook with both hands, though he had not opened it once. Austin stood by the shelf of mugs, his camera bag on the floor, feeling the awkward ache of being useful in one way and useless in another. Vivian, who had ridden up in Car 8, came in with a clipboard. "I need names," she said gently, "just for the report. Everyone who rode up in the Car 7? Austin reached for his jacket pocket. "I can help. Thank you." She handed him a pencil. "Write clearly. The cold makes my fingers clumsy." He took the clipboard and began with his own name. Then he made his first mistake. He wrote Samantha's name under passengers and added a question mark beside it. Vivian leaned over. Her voice stayed low. "We do not put marks by a person's name." Austin looked down at the question mark. It seemed small and rude now, like an accusation on paper. "Right," he said. "Sorry, no harm." Vivian took the pencil, erased the mark with the edge of her thumb, and brushed the crumbs away. Names first, questions later. Austin watched the clean space beside Samantha Sterling. Names first, questions later. Of course, the mountain had a system for grief. Not a cold one, a careful one. He had spent years photographing people celebrating on these slopes, but Vivian knew the other side too. The lost child, the twisted ankle, the sudden phone call, the moment when a holiday stopped being a holiday. He took the clipboard back and wrote the remaining names with care. The second mistake came 10 minutes later. Ski Patrol officer asked if anyone had touched Samantha's belongings. Austin remembered the envelope, the trail map, the peppermint smell. Wanting to help, he stepped toward the covered bench. "I saw something in her map," he said. "An envelope. I can show you." Vivian's hand came to rest lightly on his sleeve. "Let Patrol handle the purse and pockets. I was not going to take anything." "I know." Her eyes were kind. "But up here we keep hands where everyone can see them. It protects the story from getting muddled." The story. Austin looked through the frosted glass at the shape beneath the blanket. He had thought of evidence. Vivian had thought of the story. He stepped back. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For saying it that way." She gave a small nod, then went to speak with the patrol officer. Austin folded his hands around the mug someone had given him. Tea, not coffee. Black, strong, and sweetened with more honey than he would have chosen. He drank it anyway. A few minutes later, Vivian returned to the doorway. "You saw something. An envelope," he said. She looked at it during the ride, popped it into a trail map. "Anything else?" She had peppermint lozenges. She mentioned the Olympics. She said she promised herself she would see the view. The words came out plain. That helped. Vivian wrote them down. "Good," she said. "That helps." Austin let the praise land without making too much of it. The couple had stopped whispering. The retired man had taken off his gloves. Snow tapped softly against the window, each flake making no sound on its own, all of them together, making a hush. Austin looked at his camera bag. His anniversary clients would have to be rescheduled. The morning light had moved on without him. He thought about leaving once the patrol finished with statements. He could go down, hand in his memory card, and let official people do official things. Instead, he stayed. Not because he was brave, not because he knew what to do, because Samantha Sterling had laughed at his joke about clouds, and someone ought to remember the order of things. By noon, the upper station had settled into a strange quiet. The car had been taken out of service. Patrol had spoken to everyone twice. The young couple had gone down with a staff member. The retired man waited for his nephew to come up from the village. Austin sat at the narrow table in the staff room while Vivian sorted through printed lift logs, a pot of soup warmed on a hot plate nearby, tomato and basil from the cafe downstairs. The smell filled the little room in a way that made it harder to feel alone. Steam clouded the window above the sink. Someone had left a loaf of crusty bread in a paper sleeve, and Vivian tore off a piece without asking whether Austin wanted some. She put it beside his mug. Eat, he did. The bread was chewy at the crust and soft in the middle, warm enough. Butter caught in the torn places. Vivian spread papers across the table. If you want to help with time. Time? Who boarded when? Who sat where? What happened before Tower 4? What happened after? She tapped the pencil against the logs. Small pieces. Austin pulled his camera from the bag. I took a few shots in the station before boarding. And maybe the timestamps help. They might. He turned the camera on, then angled the screen toward her. His first attempt at help had made a question mark. His second had nearly touched what should not be touched. This time he waited. Vivian leaned close, one elbow on the table. There, she said. That is Samantha in line. The screen showed Samantha in her cream parka, red scarf bright at her throat, trail map folded under one arm. Behind her, the young couple smiled at something on a phone. The retired man stood farther back, reading the sign about lift safety. Austin zoomed in. Look at her hand, Vivian said. Samantha held the small envelope. The corner showed a return address printed in blue. Vivian copied what she could see. Her handwriting was square and clear. They moved to the next image. Steam from Austin's coffee blurred the foreground. Samantha was speaking to him, one hand lifted, the envelope still visible. The young woman behind her looked past the camera, laughing at someone outside the frame. Your pictures catch people softer than they expect, Vivian said. Austin kept his eyes on the screen. That is usually the part they buy. No, she said. That is the part they keep. The room went still in a way that was not empty. He advanced to the next frame. It showed the gondola doors, the inside bench, Samantha stepping in. Vivian pointed. Seat map. Austin took a napkin and sketched the small square of the car. Samantha on the far bench. The young couple to her right. The retired man by the door. And Austin opposite. Vivian slid him a clean sheet. Use paper. Napkins go missing. He smiled despite the day. Most folks here do it this way, she added. There was no sting in it. He redrew the car on paper. Slower this time. Vivian labeled each seat. Her hands began to find a rhythm across the table. She passed him logs before he asked. He turned the camera when she leaned in. She wrote while he described. The kettle clicked off. Snow brushed the window. A radio murmured from the shelf, then fell quiet. Austin noticed that he had stopped trying to prove he could help. He was simply helping. The difference loosened something between his shoulders. Vivian reached for the trail map Patrol had placed inside a clear evidence sleeve. She did not open it. She only read the note attached to the outside. Envelope found inside map, she said. Addressed Lila Sterling. Not opened. Daughter? Likely. The name warmed and saddened the room at once. Austin looked back through his emissions. Wait. He enlarged the photo of Samantha in line. The envelope had shifted in her hand. The front was partly visible. Not Leela, he said. Vivian bent close. Leela's bakery? Austin adjusted the zoom. The printed words came into focus. Leela's bakery, Whistler Village. Vivian sat back. That is beside the bookstore. Samantha said she promised herself she would see the view. Maybe she had another promise too. Patrol came in then, bringing a gust of cold and a smell of snow on nylon. Vivian gave them the note, the timestamps, and the seat map. Austin handed over copies from his camera, careful to keep his hands steady. The patroller read, then nodded. "This helps," he said. Her family called. Samantha had a known heart condition. She came up alone this morning before meeting her niece at the bakery. The room softened, not into relief exactly, but into shape. "So no locked room mystery," Austin said quietly. The patroller shook his head. "No foul play, just a sad ride. A sad ride." The phrase was plain enough to hold. After he left, Vivian poured more tea. Austin wrapped both hands around the mug. The honey had sunk to the bottom, and the last sip was sweeter than the rest. "I thought I was supposed to solve something," he said. Vivian tore another piece of bread and set it on the plate between them. "You did." He looked up. "You helped keep her morning whole," she said. "That matters." The soup gave off its tomato steam. The bread sat torn and shared. Outside the frosted glass, people moved with care. Austin breathed in. For the first time all day, the room felt less like a place where they were waiting and more like a place where people knew how to stay. Later, when the afternoon light turned silver, Vivian found him by the window overlooking the village. The clouds had lifted enough to show the white lanes below and the dark ribs of evergreens between them. Gondola cars moved again on the cable, one after another, small red cabins carrying ordinary lives upward. Vivian held the clear sleeve with the trail map inside. Patrol spoke with the niece, she said. "Her name is Leela. She owns the bakery." Austin nodded. "The envelope? A birthday card." Samantha brought it up because she wanted to write inside it at the top. Something about finally seeing the mountain before joining Leela for lunch. That sounds like her. "You knew her for 20 minutes. Sometimes 20 minutes is enough to know what a person hoped for that morning." Vivian stood beside him, close enough that he could smell tea on her breath and cold air in the wool of her sleeves. "I'll need to tell you something," Austin said. He kept his eyes on the gondolas. Vivian waited. "My mother died in a chair at breakfast," he said. "Years ago. Nothing dramatic, just coffee cooling beside her hand. Since then, when something happens suddenly, I start looking for an explanation with edges. A reason. A missing piece. Something that makes it less ordinary." The words were all he had. 3 sentences. Maybe 4. Enough. Vivian did not reach for him. She did not smooth it over. After a while, she said, "Ordinary things can be hard to forgive." Austin nodded once. The window glass held a faint reflection of them both, standing side by side in the staff room with soup on the hot plate and snow beyond the pane. Vivian passed him a napkin, not because he was crying much, only because he might. He took it and folded it once in his hand. "Thank you," he said. Of course. A gondola car slid into view, its windows catching the pale sun. For a second, each cabin looked lit from within. Austin pressed his thumb along the folded edge of the napkin. The paper was soft from being handled. Small things held, if you let them. The next morning smelled of cinnamon buns, dark coffee, and waxed wooden floors. Austin arrived at the base station before the first rush, camera on his shoulder, scarf tucked flat, boots brushed clean of street slush. He did not hover near the wall with his cup as he usually did. He walked straight to the gate, where Vivian stood checking the day's lift schedule. She looked up. "Morning, Austin. Morning." He held out a small white bakery box. "From Leela." Vivian lifted an eyebrow. "I stopped by before opening," he said. "She asked me to bring these up, for patrol, and you." Vivian opened the lid. 4 cinnamon buns rested inside, glazed lightly, still warm enough to scent the cold air around them. "She said Samantha always bought too many," Austin added, "in case somebody needed one." Vivian's face changed in the smallest way. "That sounds useful." "I thought so." The first passengers began to gather. A family from Ontario, a pair of snowboarders, an older man traveling alone, with a careful grip on his ticket. Austin glanced at the line, then at the gondola cars. "Car 7 has the better window," he said to the older man. "Less glare in the morning." The man smiled. "You work here?" Austin looked at Vivian. She was already smiling. "Some days," Austin said. "It feels that way." The doors opened with their soft, padded thump. The family stepped in. The snowboarders followed. The older man hesitated, and Austin offered one steady hand to the edge of the door, not touching him, only making the space clear. Vivian passed him the small clipboard. "Seat notes?" she asked. Austin took it without needing the system explained. The pencil felt familiar between his fingers. Outside, Whistler Village brightened under a clean winter sky, roofs shining, windows catching gold, the mountain waiting above everything. From the bakery box, cinnamon and sugar rose into the cold. Car 7 lifted from the station and began its quiet climb.